Happy New Year's. I worked on a Terraria mod a few months back as an excuse to learn some C# and pixel art. I've spent more time in this game than being a responsible college student in my first semester.
What the hell?
And one of my favorite parts of Terraria is the modding scene. Mod developers have been able to push the limits of what can be done in this game. From making changes that completely alter gameplay, to adding new content like enemies and bosses like this thing. Wait, this is supposed to be a game with pixel art graphics. Where are the pixels? I decided that I wanted to make weapons. In the start of this game, getting prepared to fight the first set of bosses is more painful than having to sit through this whole video. Having weapons that hit as hard as a feather and have the same range as a feather barely helps. To compensate, I created a new set of starter weapons for each class using a material called Spirit Remnant, which is obtainable from catching roaming spirits at night. Roaming spirits are critters that spawn at night and can be caught with a bug net. They try to fly away from the player when they get too close. Anyone who has played this game knows that nighttime on the first night is almost impossible to survive when exposed, so making these weapons requires a lot of effort. Obtaining a bug net is also a hard challenge, since you need 50 silver coins in your inventory to have access to the merchant. I needed to test these weapons, so I created two NPCs. The Chaser Slime, which dashes towards the player to deal damage, and the Spitter Slime, which spits projectiles at the player. Don't mind the names, I don't know what I was smoking while coming up with these names. They sound like what crackheads do to random people walking home at night. Anyways, actually onto the weapons. The melee weapon is the Lost Dagger, a short sword that fires a spiritual projection every 3 swings. The projection has less damage, so being close to the enemy often works better. This is viable mostly for weaker enemies, but against bosses like the Eye of Cthulhu, the projectile is likely the only way you are damaging it, since short swords are completely useless. I made the projectile appear to glow using sprite batches to draw. Basically, through code, I manually drew 3 of these sprites layered on top of each other, then slightly larger and more transparent than the previous. The inside appears brightest, while each subsequent sprite fades. Man, I sound so nerdy right now. It's a very bare bones way of making a glow effect without shaders, but I think it looks fine. Before I move on to the ranged weapons, I'd like to talk about my idea of a ranged subtype of weapons. I created a new longbow weapon type, which shoots arrows at a slower rate than ordinary bows, but deals high damage and has a high chance to crit. I made a longbow called the Spiritual Longbow, and it converts Jester arrows to Soul Release arrows. This arrow does 3 times more weapon damage and can pierce through up to 3 enemies. It does well against bosses like Eye of Cthulhu, since it kills the minions when they spawn with its pierce. I see a lot of mods convert only wooden arrows to mod exclusive arrows, so I wanted to change things up. Jester arrows are crafted with stars and wooden arrows, and since the player is going around catching roaming spirits at night, there's a high chance the player will stumble upon fallen stars too. For Summoner, I made the Guiding Lantern, which spawns these mini versions of the roaming spirits that lunge at enemies and bounce back on collision. Similarly to the Lost Dagger projectile, these minions also use sprite patch for the glow effect. I think making summoner weapons is harder than weapons for every other damage class in general. Fun fact, minions are projectiles, and you have to not only code for its movement and effects, but also make a custom buff, a custom AI system to track enemies, a way to make them not attack through walls, and make them look natural by spacing them out. Crap, I'm going on a nerdy tangent again. Finally, for the mage weapon, which I am most excited to share, I created 2 of them. The first of the 2 is the Pulsing Star, a tome that fires spinning stars. The unique gimmick for this weapon is that stars move faster and deal more damage sometime after they are fired. You can tell when the star is at full damage when it starts spinning faster and then pulsates. This forces the player to time their attacks, and against bosses like Eye of Cthulhu, it works extremely well. The last weapon I want to talk about is the Guided Wand, a wand which fires a projectile that moves in an oscillating pattern. Its movement makes it not optimal for enemies on the ground as the projectile is destroyed when it collides with a block, but it works well for bosses like King Slime and Eye of Cthulhu. I also added a secondary function to this weapon. When pressing right click, it spawns a projectile that circles around the player, and this projectile doesn't collide with blocks. This provides the guided wand with a feasible way of dealing damage up close. The trail you see is called a prim, or primitive, and honestly I would act nerdy right now if I actually understood how it worked, but I genuinely don't. Making the prim trail work actually took me like 2 weeks to do, so I don't even want to think about it. On another note, I also added an accessory, the star crystal. The projectile also relies on sprite batch, but as the time since the projectile was created increases, the projectile texture becomes more transparent and grows, simulating a simple explosion effect. Anyways, that's all I wanted to show for this video. I'm not sure if I'm going to work on this project anymore, and I don't plan on releasing it yet. I have some more Terraria weapons created, but other than that, I don't have any other progress on this mod. If anyone would like to see a second part to this video with 10-ish weapons that I created, but feel that they are not in a presentable state, I may consider it. I created this channel as I thought that documenting what I made and looking back on it in the future could give me some inspiration. Oh, and I guess an introduction would be nice too. Better late than never. I'm using the moniker Hollow Tree. I like video games, and judging by the last video for my college final, video games maps are what I'm interested in the most in these games. I'm also interested in digital design, coding, and 3D modeling, so expect something related to these at some point in the next few videos. I'll talk more about myself some other day. Okay, bye.